This is the complete L-sit guide I needed, and let's just get straight into it. So the L-sit is the most fundamental calisthenics skill because it incorporates basic core compression strength, straight arm strength, and also scapular depression and protraction, which makes it the first beginner skill that you want to learn, especially if you want to level up in calisthenics and eventually learn skills like the front lever and the full planche. So there's basically two main things that people struggle with when learning the L-sit. It's basically either hamstring mobility or it's core and hip flexor strength, mostly the second one. So I'm gonna quickly go over the hamstring flexibility right now. So for the hamstring mobility, all you really need is to be able to just sit down in an L, literally as you would for an L-sit. It's not even that complicated. And if you, for some reason, if you can't sit in an L and you really don't have that flexibility and you're like this, then the one hamstring stretch that you can do is you have like some weight, it can be really lightweight, and you can just bend down and do kind of like a Jefferson curl stretch. Boom. And let it sink. And you'll feel it in the hamstrings and maybe even in the upper calf also. So if you have the proper hamstring mobility, then you're ready to go on to the first step of the L-sit, which would be the tuck L-sit. So firstly, the tuck L-sit would look like this. Pretty simple. Now just a couple of things that you want to focus on when doing the tuck L-sit and any of the progressions following the tuck L-sit. So first, you want to make sure that when you are in the position that your hands are kind of in front of you a little bit, not behind you. When your hands are behind you, it puts a lot more load on the triceps, on like the long head, and it makes it a lot harder. Putting your hands forward also makes it so that it targets your core more and you're in a more compressed state. Number two, make sure your legs are completely together and even squishing kind of together, which engages the core also more. And lastly, you want to make sure that your scapulars are depressed and pushed forwards like this. You want to make sure that your scapulars are pushed down like as if you're doing a dip. You know, at the top of the dip position, if you're just being relaxed, your shoulders will kind of go up. But the advice is that you press them down and keep them down. That's called scapular depression. And scapular protraction would be if your scapulars are slightly forwards, kind of like you're doing a planche almost. So those are the three things that you want to focus on when doing any progression of the L-sit. And once you can do 15 seconds on the tuck L-sit, then you should be good for step number 2. Now step number 2 would be a one-legged L-sit, which would look like this. Very simple, just like the tuck L-sit, same cues with the scapular protraction, keeping your arms locked out. But this time you'll have one leg fully extended, like you're in an L-sit. So it's kind of like a half L-sit, if you want to call it that. And for this one, if you hit 10 seconds on this, you'll be perfectly fine to go on to the third step. And the third step would be what I call the full tuck L-sit, which will look like this. This one is slightly different than the tuck that I went over in the first step, because this time you're tucking with more range of motion, which makes it harder, right? And contrary to popular belief, you would think that the one-legged would be harder because your leg would be more extended out. But actually, since you're tucking in harder, it actually makes it even harder than step 2. And so if you could do this tuck L-sit or this full tuck L-sit for 10 seconds, then you'll be able to do the full L-sit. So 2 exercises that you can use to supplement your L-sit training to train your core compression are the following. So the first would be what I like to call leg lifts or core compression leg lifts. I'll put a name probably on the screen or something like that, which would look like this. So you would be kind of in an L-sit, but like just sitting down, and you would have your hands in front of you, kind of like around where your kneecap is, and then you would try to lift your legs while bringing your chest down, like this. And you would kind of make pulses upwards. This increases the range of motion that you have for your core compression, which if you see people doing crazy moves like V-sits and manas or whatever, that's because they have crazy core compression strength. It's like the strength that you have in the shortened position of your core and your abs. And the second exercise that you can use to supplement is a partial L-sit actually. So look like this. Now, just because you can't get your legs to fully 90 degrees, doesn't mean that working the bottom range of motion won't strengthen you for that top. It actually will. Doing this is actually like a really good exercise if you're getting pretty close to the L-sit. And complementary, you can do leg raises like this also. And even for the more beginner progressions, you can do the same thing but just with knee raises. Very important thing to do whenever doing L-sits or even like leg raises or any ab movement, you want to make sure that your body is all compressed and tight instead of like this. A lot of times you'll see people doing leg raises like this, right? But if you just maintain that core compression the whole time and that core engagement, then that would be a lot more effective for your core strength. As for the program for learning the L-sit, you would want to do whatever progression you're on for 3 to 5 sets, depending on how much you want to specialize and train and etc. And also on top of that, you would do 2 to 5 sets of the supplementary exercises, the leg lifts and the partial L-sits / leg raises. And you would do those for 2 to 5 sets. And just make sure in your workout that you're resting properly. You don't have to rest too long, especially for core. Just 1 to 3 minutes per set would be perfectly fine. So that was it for the L-sit guide. Let me know if it was helpful down in the comments below. And let me know what video topics you also want me to cover. Peace.